Hi there, hello. This is Patrick O'Grady from English Hanoi. Thank you very much for joining us today. I think we've got a very good lesson. We're going to be looking at part 3 of the speaking test, and we're going to be looking at a lot of different things. I've written down a few things. We're going to be looking at the requirements, what to do if you don't understand the answer or the question, and how you can follow up on that if you're having difficulty with the question. We're going to be looking at 4 different ways to give your opinion, and we're going to be looking at 3 brand new questions from 2019 for part 3. And I'll be working with some helpful vocabulary, how to paraphrase, and at the end of the lesson, I'm going to be giving you a special little bonus. So I hope you can stick around for that. In the meantime, maybe you don't know who I am. Let me take a minute to introduce myself. As I said before, my name is Patrick O'Grady, and I've been teaching English for a long time. I taught almost 20 years now. I was in Korea for 3 years. I was in Saudi Arabia for 5 years, and I'm here in Vietnam teaching IELTs and communication for 11 years now. So it's a long time, but thank you very much for joining me. And what are we going to do? Well, let's get right into it, shall we? Let's do this lesson. So the first thing I want to talk about is that this is a carry-on from the lesson we did yesterday, where we looked at a part 2 question, and I think the question was talk about an older person that you find interesting. Okay. Now, in part 3 of the speaking test, it's a continuation of the subject from part 2, you see. So these new questions we will look at have some reference to part 2, which we did yesterday. So in part 3 of the speaking test, you'll remember you don't have time to write anything down. And the test, when we move into part 3, it's going to be 4 to 5 minutes long. And your answer, what the examiner is looking for, he's going to be looking for a minimum of 30 seconds. And probably better to have a minute, maybe even longer answer. So here we go. We've got part 3. Once again, it's 4 to 5 minutes long. Your answer should be at least 30 seconds long. All right? Probably a little bit longer. Right. So those are some of the requirements. The examiner is going to be looking at how comfortable you are, how fluent you are with your answers, your pronunciation, your grammar. All of these things are going to come into play in part 3. So, what happens if the examiner gives you a difficult question? What can you do? Well, the worst thing you can do is shut up, not say anything. You need to get some clarification. So I've written a few ideas down, a few sentences, and I'd like you to repeat after me. Again, if we're having a difficult time with the question that the examiner asks, you might say something like, can you ask me the question in a different way? Once again, maybe you could say it after me. Can you ask me the question in a different way? Okay. Another thing you might say is, sorry, I'm not sure what you mean by the word. Maybe elephant is giving you a difficult time. I'm not sure what you mean by elephant. Can you say it in a different way? And again, sometimes the examiner will ask a difficult word. You're not familiar with the vocabulary. And it's okay to get some clarification on this. So there's two different ways you can ask for clarification. The last one I'm going to, last thing I'm going to suggest is maybe you need a little bit of time. If your answer, you could say something like this. Let me think about that for a moment. Let me think about that for a moment. That's a tough question. Maybe it's, okay? So sometimes you need a little bit of time to scratch your head and think about these things, and that's a really nice, simple sentence you can use that will help you get a little bit of extra time to think. Let me think about that for a moment. Okay. So, we're in part 3 of the speaking test, and I'm sure you remember in part 1, it's all easy questions about yourself, and part 2, it's a little bit more challenging. You're going to speak for a while, and part 3 is going to focus on maybe more theoretical questions and asking for your opinion on some different ideas. So today I'm going to share with you 4 different ways to give an opinion. So let's go through it. The first opinion we have is a strong opinion, and I've got a few different ways we can show our strong opinion. So, strong opinion. 1, I'm sure that. So you might say, I'm sure that coffee is the most delicious drink in the world. Okay? Another thing you might say, I have no doubt that. I have no doubt that coffee comes from Ethiopia. Okay? We're sure about this opinion. We're strong about it. And thirdly, we've got, I'm convinced that. I'm convinced that coffee is the most popular morning drink in the world. I don't know if it's true, but I feel strongly about it, so I'm going to say it. And that's something else that's important on the IELTS test. If you're not sure, you don't need to be... the test is not quizzing you on your knowledge of a subject. You can say something and maybe it's not true. For example, I just said, I'm convinced that coffee is the most popular morning drink, I think I said something like that, in the world. I don't know if it's true. Maybe it's tea, and that's okay. We're not being tested on our knowledge of coffee, we're being tested on our speaking ability. So, there we go. Strong opinion. The second opinion we have here is a neutral opinion. A neutral opinion. Not strong, it's neutral. All right? Neutral opinion. A few different things we could say. I think that coffee is pretty good. I feel that coffee is a great drink. It's a good drink. In my opinion, coffee is pretty great, or it's an enjoyable drink. In my view, I'm getting sick of talking about coffee. In my view, Vietnam is a great place to live. And finally, a neutral opinion, I suppose. I suppose it's okay to live in Hanoi. Okay, neutral, it's not strong. So that's our second way of giving an opinion. Our third way of giving an opinion is a subjective opinion. Subjective opinion. In my experience, I've seen a lot of people drink coffee. What I found is, after I drink coffee, I get wide awake. And as I see it, these are 3 different ways we could say we could give our subjective opinion. Okay. That's 3. And number 4, we've got a general point of view. And this is nice and important. We can use this all the time. These different phrases here. general point of view. We've got some people say that coffee is a terrible drink and it makes their stomach sick. That's not good. It is considered that coffee is, or we might say, it is generally accepted that Hanoi is a very hot city. Okay. There we go. So general point of view. So that's 4 different ways we can give our views, our points of views. And let's move on to the most important stuff here, the actual questions from part 3 of the speaking test. And as I said before, these are the real questions that I've managed to plunder and from students who've recently taken the test, and they've had a chance to talk to me about different answers that different questions that they were given. So I was lucky enough to get this information, and I'm going to share it with you. So let's do it. So I've got three different questions here. Let's look at the first one here. Why do some people dislike living with old people? Why do some young people dislike living with old people? So why do some young people dislike living with old people? Now, you'll remember from my last lesson that we need to do some paraphrasing. It's really important that we paraphrase this first question. It's very easy in a conversation when we're out having a coffee or drinking a beer. It's very easy to come back with that answer. Why do young people dislike living with old people? You could say, well, I think young people dislike living with old people is because 1, 2, 3. That's not good. We want to paraphrase it a bit. So I've written some vocabulary down here. We've got dislike. So we'll go down here with dislike. These are 4 different vocabulary words for dislike. We've got animosity. Animosity. You say it. Aversion. Aversion. You say it. Okay. Disapproval. Disapproval. Displeasure. Displeasure. Loathing. Loathing. Oh, I think that's 5 different vocabulary words there. Not 4. Good. So stick around for a little bit, and near the end, I'm going to give you a proper answer. It's a good answer for this question, but we'll come back to it shortly. So our second question that we'll be looking at is, what are the advantages of living with old people? What are the advantages of living with old people? Now again, we want to paraphrase, yeah? So I've got the advantages. I've got a few different words for advantage. We have asset. You say it. Asset. Convenience. Convenience. Oops. Support. Support. Aid. Aid. So again, we're going to come back to this in a minute, and I'll give you the full answer for each of these questions. I just want to go through it first and get you comfortable with it, maybe thinking a little bit about your answers. Question 3. How do teenagers treat old people in your country? How do teenagers treat old people in your country? So with treat here, I thought we'd do some vocabulary with treat. Conduct. Conduct. Deal with. Deal with. handle, handle, manage, manage. Good. Okay. So, let's see here. Our special treat for today is I've got a proper answer for each of these questions, and we'll just go through it. So we've moved into part 3. We finished part 2. The examiner will say to you, "We're finished part 2. We're going to move into part 3." Now we've been asking we've been talking about old people, and I've got a few questions. Let's consider. Why do some young people dislike living with old people? What I've noticed is that elderly people have a lot of rules, and youths are seeking new experiences and loathe these restrictions. For example, when I was in my teens living with my parents, they would always tell me to do different things. For example, be home by a certain time, or forcing me to wear some special clothing. I suppose lots of young people feel the same way. Okay, so that answer is pretty good, maybe a little bit short. Your job, think about different ways you can answer, make it a little bit longer. Maybe give some more examples, maybe add on, some people feel that, feel this or that. There's lots of extra things we can add on there to make your answers a little bit longer. Okay, so that's our first question, answer for our first question. And let's move on to our second question. Oh, that's all right. What are the advantages of living with old people? I have no doubt that aged people have many assets and support networks that would improve the living standards of everyone they live with. Many seniors have excellent cooking skills, honed after decades of practice. Furthermore, they are often very happy to share their knowledge. Now, again, that's not a bad answer, a little bit short. You can think about different ways you can expand your answer. Maybe give an example there, or again, give another person's opinion or some different ideas there. It's going to be great. And our third question. How do teenagers treat old people in your country? Oops. Got to flip the page. In my opinion, the vast majority of teens deal with retired people very well. I've seen them change bus seats for the elderly and help carry groceries to their car. Of course, there are always some stories in the news where youngsters do something nasty, but I'm sure that's in the minority. Okay, again, a little bit short. I want you to think about how you can stretch it out and add a few extra sentences and a little bit extra information in there, and you're going to do great on your IELTS test. I've got a great feeling about it. Hey, thank you very much for coming, but I've got a little bit of homework for you before we finish up here. Here's what I'd like you to do for your homework. Make some notes for the questions. Didn't write an S there, bad teacher. Make some notes for the questions. Go back, look at the questions, maybe write the questions down, and get a pen and write down your answers. Give some thought as to how you're going to do this. It's a really great idea to write your answers down. If you're just sitting back and thinking, I don't really think that it gets into your head, okay? So some active work there is going to be very helpful and going to pay off in the long run. So make some notes. I want you to get a, your timer out on your phone and time yourself, okay? Note how long your answers are, okay? If you're answering in 15, 20 seconds, that's not good. So go back and look at some different techniques and how we can stretch our answers out, come up with some different people's, some different opinions, and again, time it out. You want at least 30 seconds. A lot better to have about 1 minute for each of your answers in part 3 of the speaking test. Finally, practice speaking out loud with a friend. Okay, your friend can listen and note. Excuse me. Your friend can listen and note some of your problems, some of your mistakes, and help you improve. If you don't have a friend to help you practice, that's not a problem at all. Get your phone out and practice, record on your phone. Almost every digital phone these days has a recording mechanism, a recording app, and it's really quite easy to do. The great thing about recording yourself is you can go back and listen very closely and find your mistakes. It can really help your pronunciation. So that's your homework for today, guys. Thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. If you liked it, please give us a thumbs up, share it out with your friends and family, and if you're interested in studying IELTS, give us a phone call, give us a shout over at English Hanoi, and our friendly staff will help you find the course that's right for you. We have free placement tests, and we're very happy to give you some direction as to how to beat the IELTS. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. Have a great day. Bye-bye.